Alright, so we are back and we are handling the Drown today. We've primed the model with Wolf Gray, and our first color will be Ocean's Depths. Now we're going to cover most of the clothing in this. We're going to use a couple of slightly more advanced techniques just because we're going to layer a few glazes over top of this. We're going to be using GW's pre-mixed glaze, so you don't have to make any glaze yourself. And as usual, we're going to do our best to show you as much of the model being painted as we can, so I'm going to keep my hand out of the way so that you can see for yourself how all this goes. And with that, we're going to apply a second coat of the same paint just to get that color nice and solid as a base. So in order to get the most out of this, we are going to have to do multiple thin layers to make sure that everything covers well. Now we switch over to a lighter blue-green. Now some of these colors are going to look a little too much in one direction or the other from what we were basing our artwork from. But trust me, once we get done layering all of our different stuff, you're going to end up with a fantastic product. While I can't promise that you have talent, I can promise you that you can have technique, and as we've discussed previously, we can learn technique so that we can make what we see, not necessarily talent so that we can see something without anything for inspiration. Now we're going to switch over to Hydra Turquoise. This is a lighter turquoise color for our darker turquoise coat, and that coat is going to be a centerpiece for this, so we're absolutely going to have to put multiple layers on it to get it right where we want it to be in terms of blue and green and dark and light. So this is one of those steps that you're just going to have to trust the process. Put the layer down thin, focus on the higher points, don't cover all the valleys as much as we have previously. This is not a pajama coat, so we're not going to cover every aspect of the model's areas with this. We only want to cover the higher leveled aspects and the things that we want to be brighter. As you can see, it's just thin layers right on those higher points. Try to make sure that since this model has a very coming up out of the water or coming down into the water look to her, it's easy to kind of pick out where the high points are and to get the folds of fabric in her back and on her arms, and then of course on the bottom of her coat. We're just going to go through and we're going to get all those. We're also going to get some of her legging and some of her boot. Next on our do-to list is the Drakenhof Nightshade, the blue wash from Citadel. This is absolutely one of my go-tos, and we're going to use it as a completely out the pot. We're not going to thin it down, we're not going to add anything, we're just going to let it be dark, and we're going to use it to make all those colors blend together and add a good deal of blue and hue to all of this while we're at it. We're going to focus primarily on all of our turquoise spots, and we're not going to worry about that blue-green that's lighter on her skirt, as we want that to end up being a different shade later. Be mindful of all the usual trappings, try not to let it pool too much, make sure you're doing one section at a time, etc. Again, so we're going to do basically everything that we painted turquoise except for her skirt at this stage. Next, our first shade in the green spectrum, the Coelia Greenshade, is a nice blue-green. It's going to suit our next step very well. We're going to aim to cover the same areas, but we're going to do the skirt too this time. Now we're going to use more of a seafoam blue. It's a little harder to find, but it's worth hunting down, especially for this project. We're going to use this to add some more light coloration to the thinner cloth around, so we're going to get her chest and part of her thigh and her trademark ruffles. With that complete, we're going to use this color to put in some stark highlights on some very predominant and sharp edges, as well as breathe some life back into her skirt as some of the lighter parts of her character's clothing and colorations. Alright, next up we're going to use the Coelia Greenshade, and we're going to put it right over top of the sea foam. Alright, with that done, we're going to touch up our seafoam green a little bit here and there and switch over to our Biel-Tan Green. This is going to help us distinguish your hair as that actual green and not just the teal blue colors we've been using for everything else. Alright, now our secret weapon, Gulliman Blue, which is a blue glaze by Citadel, and we're going to use this to get the final bit of color that we're going to have at the end of our model. This is going to bring a lot of those teals and greens fully into that deep teal, dark blue spectrum and really give us the completion of the look that we're trying to get. Now we're going to use Vallejo Dark Aluminum, a wonderful but very liquid metal color that we're going to use as our base for all of the metallics that we have. I'm going to show you that not only are we going to put this down, but we're actually going to have it spill over a little bit, and we're going to use a wet brush to suck up the extra and clean that extra paint that went places it wasn't supposed to go back, so that we don't actually have to repaint anything. Now same for the staff, a nice even coat all over. And as we do that, let me remind you that we're actually going to turn all of this gold at the end. We're just going to use a couple of different ways to do that. Touch everything up, make sure it's nice and neat, and you're about to see that we're going to use some water right here and a clean brush. That's why I keep pulling it away quickly, so I can actually pull some of that silver out of her hair where it went where it wasn't supposed to go. And with that, we're back to Gulliman Blue, and now we're going to go through with the back cape and her full coat all now fully dried. And we're going to use Gulliman Blue. Now this time, we are going to go kind of heavy on it, and you'll find that we're going to use this glaze kind of heavy throughout the rest of this model because we want a pretty drastic shift in color to get where I wanted it to be. So what I'm doing now is I'm going through her entire pea coat, and we're going to go through every part of it, and we're going to add this glaze in almost like a wash, and you're going to see in real time it shifts to this amazing dark blue color. With the pea coat done, we're also going to go ahead and go over those sea foam areas around her skirt. We are also going to cover the blouse, and now that's nice and blue. Next up, we're going to use Model Air Chrome, and we're going to use this on the parts of the model that are metal that I also want to be bright. This is a very bright silver, so once we add our layers to turn it gold, this is what's going to pop. And with that done, we're going to go back in with our clean wet brush and do a little more cleanup, making sure that silver and that metal flake doesn't end up somewhere it's not supposed to. We're also going to go through it this time and make sure that nothing's pooling too hard here in the skirt. Alright, we're going to go back to our seafoam and just tighten up our highlights, make sure that our edges still have that seafoam color. We're going to go in with kind of light taps and touches and strokes so that we can just bring a little bit of that seafoam color back to all the areas that started at seafoam. Now here we're using a wet brush to soak up some of that excess Gulliman flesh, and we're going to switch over to our first secret for gold, the Sepia wash. We're going to put that right on top of all of the silver that we've done so far, and that is going to turn it into a beautiful base gold, with a little bit darker where we didn't use the chrome and a little bit lighter where we did. So we're going to make sure we've got everything nice and covered in the sepia, and you'll see it turns gold pretty efficiently right in front of you. Next up, we're going to use Deep Green by Vallejo, and we're going to use this like a highlight, and we're going to use it to make her hair more obviously green so it's easier to distinguish from her body. While we have this color, we're also going to go ahead and do the strap on her eye goggle thing. One of the straps should be green as it goes back towards your ear. With that done, we're going to go to Gorgon Hide. This is going to let us do all of her skin in this sickly, pale, drowned color. This is going to be perfect for characters that have supernatural, light complexions. Let me show you, you want to make sure that your paint is nice and thin, almost like milk. And it's just a matter of slowly adding thin layers until you get it exactly where you want it. Go back and forth until you get it right where you're happy with it. This part takes time, so take your time. It's hard to fix and it's easy to mess up, so just take the extra time. Alright, we're going to use Andrea Blue and we are almost done. Get that water blue and we'll go to the next step. Mephston Red to get our red spot on her eyepiece, and we are just about done. Ocean's Deep to go ahead and do some highlights on the pea coat and some of the darker teal. You're going to want to use this to create little lines at the tips of where her pea coat folds. That way you can show the little bit of light of that original lighter teal as well as any of the sharp edges that you can get to. In the end, we decided to go back to Mephston Red to do the entirety of her corset, so get that all nice and red. Back to Gulliman Blue to shade all of the water and give it that nice depth of blue and tie it in with all the other colors we've used today. Handy dandy Agraz Earthshade for the corset. Also go ahead and put some Agraz on the gold around her eyes wear, and we're going to transition back to chrome, and we're going to use this to highlight all of our gold and really make it look shiny. We'll go ahead and switch over to greedy gold and finish out the last little bits of highlights just to help make sure that the face and trident don't look exactly the same. It can be a big help to have different kinds of gold highlights so that the materials don't all look identical. Alright, now I'm using Monolith Hobbies black wash and I'm doing lining with it. So the idea here is to put a little bit of black wash in between all the different areas where two different pieces clearly touch. This creates a shadow so that it looks like there's more depth to the things and helps the eye separate the different visual aspects of your model. Alright, touch up anything that needs touched up. A nice shade of Drakenhof Nightshade blue over the water, and we are on. And finally, dead black for the rim, and you can call this one done.